Hello there everybody and welcome to live coverage of this round 3 of the 2014 Thrustmaster Formula SimRacing Winter Series taking place in R Factor 2, and we find ourselves in Poland at the Tor Poznan circuit as we reach the halfway point in this 6-race championship that prepares ourselves for the main 2004 FSR season. Scott Woodwiss here to provide lead comms alongside me, as he's been for the past 2 races, giving all of his insights on the Winter Series is none other than Mr. Sam Jones. So Sam, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Scott. It's great to be here again for yet another round of the Winter Series, and once again we're looking like we've got a similar bunch of guys at the top of the timesheets today.
And of course we're here moving towards the halfway point of the season, as we said, after a rather controversial race in many ways in Imola, followed by a rather cracking race to make up for that in Estoril. But we now find ourselves in Poland, in the east of Europe, and it's a fantastic little circuit, this Tor Poznan. I'll look at the track specifications as to what it's like in terms of length. Let's have a look. It's 2.537 miles long, and it has also both a road and a kart track. It's been around for quite a while, and it's a wonderful little circuit that you don't really hear about too much. It's not too far away from Warsaw in Poland, and quite a tricky and technical track. And looking at the track map here, so there are quite a lot of long corners here, with a couple of very tight braking zones. So nice variety of technical and tricky corners here, which could catch one or two of the drivers out if they don't have their wits about them this afternoon.
Yeah, absolutely right. I think one of the big corners is going to be turn 1. It seems to be very, very long as they're trying it out today, and it just seems to tighten up on the exit, so I expect to see quite a few drivers going wide coming out the corner, especially in the first couple of laps when they're going to be absolutely pushing on very cold tyres.
We may as well talk about the man that is currently on screen at the moment, and that is your championship leader. I'll tell you, there's the man who's actually top with the warm-up times, in fact, and that is Jim Paresis. We should talk about the fact in the Drivers' Championship, how it stands coming into round 3. And coming into Poznan, it is actually a 3-way tie, almost, I say, for the championship lead. David Greco and Yuri Toman currently sit atop with 37 points apiece, and Jim Paresis sits third with just 1 point behind in 36. The American Matt Sentel is fourth with 21 points, and then the veteran Patrick DeWitt is fifth with 18. Martin Hodas is sixth, the Slovenian, with 17 points. Then Villa Lapala, who's been looking pretty strong in qualifying and warm-up all through the sessions for this race weekend, in 7th with 10 points. Steve Sock, the Englishman, in 8th with 8 points. Jörg Boshoff, 9th with 6 points from the Netherlands, and then Johnny Simon and Blair Disley, the 2 Australians, are equal 10th of the points with 4 points. Now, from what I can see, we have no David Greco today, but we do have Yuri Toman and Jim Paresis. So, Sam, this gives them a real, obviously, an obvious chance to leapfrog David in the championship. And obviously it means that David's going to have to work hard if he turns up at the finals of the second half of the season to try and sustain his position at the top of the Winter Series. But it certainly gives the chance of Yuri and Jim to definitely take some points away from him, and even possibly take the championship lead, depending on which one finishes ahead of the other. Yeah, and
talking of Jim Paresis, I definitely think that he's going to be extra motivated to go for a win today, since he's been the nearly man for the last 2 rounds. For both Imola and Estoril, he spent at least half the race sat right on the gearbox of the race leader and just not being able to make a move, so definitely today will be the day that he wants to really get his first win of the series.
Yuri Toman and David Greco have a win apiece, and of course I think it's impressive that Jim Paresis has actually managed to get himself into 3rd place, just a point away from such consistent results in the first 2 rounds at Imola and at Estoril, and he finds himself in this position where he could potentially take the championship lead. All he has to do is effectively just outscore Toman by at least 1 point, and he should be able to do that without any problems whatsoever. We're coming to the end of warm-up now, and we're getting towards our race. It's a rolling start, 45 minutes long, as it has been for the first 2 rounds. And we'll take you through the grid just before they start to move off, as the safety car, which is also one of these Formula 2 single-seaters, leads them around for the formation lap. So on pole position sits Yuri Toman, and he will be joined alongside by Jim Paresis on the front row. So the men that are 2nd and 3rd in the championship are 1st and 2nd on the grid. Then we have Villa Lapala, the Finn, and Patrick DeWitt on row 2. Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez and Johnny Simon are on row 3. Row 4 we have Matt Sentel in 7th and Jörg Boshoff in 8th, followed by Martin Hodas and Brian Stark rounding out the top 10. And Sam, if you want to take us through the rest of the grid as they make their way through the first couple of corners on the warm-up lap, and we can get ourselves ready for the start.
Yep, so on row 6 we've got Andrew Ford and Adrian Falcon. I believe Andrew Ford's making his first start in the Winter Series this year. Then we've got the returning Dmitry Zarahov in 13th, followed by Wilhelm Kranar in 14th. He participated in one round of the Winter Series last year at Estoril, and unfortunately he didn't manage to complete the first lap, so I'm sure he's looking for a better race today. In 15th, oh, we got a bit of a crash on the grid. We got James Sadler has just seems to have been hit in the rear by Chris Knight, who were meant to be in 15th and 16th. They both carried on, so hopefully not too much damage for them, as Chris Knight's now gone off the track again. So 17th is Oscar Daniel Carmona, and rounding out the grid is Marcel van der Linden.
And it does appear that Chris Knight has lost his front wing, so even before the race has started we've got a little bit of drama near the back of the field. It did seem to me that possibly Dmitry Zaharov half spun, and that caused a bit of an accordion effect, and that kind of unfortunately saw Chris Knight check up into the back of James Sadler. I'm not sure how much damage, if any, that James is carrying on the rear of that car, but of course that will become prominent to whether or not he dives into the pits before we start. Just got an onboard shot here of Marcel van der Linden, who's one of the positive sim racing drivers. He and Blair Disney's put on a fantastic performance for the team, especially in the second half of the year when they put on some great performances for the Spanish outfit. And now as you watch the cars come through, of course the pace car's going to pull off, and we're going to get set for 45 minutes here at Poznan, round 3 of the 2040 FSR Winter Series. Yuri Turman will see it pull off, and he's going to floor the throttle as soon as it goes. We are green and we are way in Poland for round 3. And a clean start looks like from the first few cars off the line, and Turman is going to hold on to the inside line as Paresis tries to make the outside pass through turn 1. And there's already a little bit of a split in the field as they head out of the first corner and towards the infield for the first time. So impressive start from Turman to hold off Paresis, but I'm pretty sure as we've got a crash in the rear with several cars. And actually it's both the leaders, in fact. My screen paused, it was Turman and Paresis hit each other. Incredible, that didn't last long. So Turman gets going. Oh, as almost unsafe release, and it was, because he makes more contact. And also we've got Oscar Daniel Carmona's gone off as well in the gravel too. But the man who starts the pole position has gone immediately down to last place. That is the worst possible start in that situation. Absolutely unbelievable that the two have come to blows. And look at the replay, Sam. I think possibly it might have been Paresis just got a little too late on the brakes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we just caught back of it just as they flashed out the camera shot, and it did look like Paresis just got into the rear of Toman, spun him out to the right as we're seeing the replay right now. Yeah, he just tries to go up the inside and clips the left rear of Toman. Toman spins out Paresis into the air. They're both going into the gravel trap, and it's work on for both of them from now on.
And the man who benefited from that the most, of course, is our Dutch veteran Patrick de Witt, who's actually sailed into the lead, and he now holds it from Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez. As I'm just watching there, Toman had his second impact, so him back down to the back of the field. He has already made it one place, and he's now straight onto the rear of Carmona for 16th position. Patrick de Witt taking advantage of the clear track he has in front of him and the incidents around him to sprint into the lead from Rodriguez in second, and then Johnny Syme with a fantastic effort up in third place already off the grid. He's made up several spots thanks to the carnage in front. And La Pala now holds 4th. Hodas is in 5th, rounding out the top 5, with Beauchamp and Sentel in 6th and 7th. So Sentel's dropped back, and it looks like also Van der Linden's had a great start. Also, he's up now to what looks to be roughly around 10th place, starting from 18th. So that's another great start. And Van der Linden's been known to make cracking getaways from the back of the fields, and it's not unusual to see him do that. And once again, we are in one of those situations.
Yeah, it's a great start, especially for Johnny Simon. I believe he started in about 9th place, so to make up 6 positions in the first lap alone is an absolutely fantastic job. So he'll be looking to improve on that, as he's actually holding on to the back of Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez here, and this is a real battle on track for 2nd position at the moment.
So as they now make their way onto, I believe we're now onto the 2nd lap already, out of what's potentially going to be how many laps we're going to get in 45 minutes. If you're watching Yuri Turman already lining up Blair Disley, the Australian. This is going to be for 15th, so Turman trying to make up for lost time as they head towards the end of lap 2. And looking to try and make a move on the inside, but Disley has the inside right. Of course, remember, he's going to have to be careful because, of course, there could be 1 or 2 connection differences, but because Disley is an Australian, he races all the way from down under, and Turman, of course, is from the Czech Republic, so there is going to be a difference and maybe a tiny bit of lag in some cases, but we'll have to see how this one plays out as Poznan just stays onto the rear end. He pulls a small gap on the exit of turn 1, but as they charge down towards turn 4, is he going to be able to try and line something up for a pass? As we've got Philip Crane has gone off into the gravel, and straight away that's exactly the same kind of move that happened with Priest and Poznan at the front, but of course in that case did it all by himself, Sam.
Yeah, at least he's got around the first lap this time around, so it's a much better race for him so far this year. But definitely looking at Poznan and Parisius, they're trying to charge back through the field and they're making up quite a bit of ground already. It'll be interesting to see how far behind DeWitt is in the championship, to see whether this can benefit him, as the two other drivers in the championship chase are really struggling at the moment.
Well, Poznan just put up a fantastic move to go up the inside of Blair Disley there to make 14th spot. And his next target is going to be James Sadler in 13th. Parisius is a couple of positions up the road.
What's happened to DeWitt? DeWitt's in the pits. Sorry to cut across you there, but DeWitt's just gone into the pits, so I'm not sure. Must have had a mistake somewhere, because you wouldn't be pitting this early on in the race for tyres, that's for sure.
No, of course not. You can see him right there, Patrick DeWitt in the pits. Now, is that possible damage from somewhere? Let's have a look. And, well, it doesn't seem to be anything too wrong. He just dives into the pits for reasons that we are unaware of. So, Patrick DeWitt has given up the lead. He rejoins now back in 16th behind Carmona. And that means now that the man who's found himself all at the front is Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez. Now, there is a message that potentially he may have started on qualifying fuel, and in all fairness to Patrick, that's apparently not the first time he's done that, is it, Sam?
No, I believe a certain Hungarian Grand Prix in the last year was a slightly similar incident, maybe under different circumstances, but no, Rodriguez Fernandez is now in the lead, and Johnny Simon's just dropped down, has he? No, he's in second. That must have been my timing, sorry about that. He's now in second, so a great start for him as Lapala goes wide. He's gone off the track in the turn 13 and he's dropped down into 7th place now.
So this very tricky Poznan circuit, catching several drivers out already. So Lapala was running around 2nd or 3rd, but he's now dropped all the way down to 7th. As mentioned, let's look at the replay. He was currently 3rd, and we'll see here, and I think he possibly got distracted by the fact that Johnny Simon got slightly wide, went to go side by side, he just ran out of road, understeered off, and I think was he able to avoid the tyres here? We'll look at the second part of this replay. You see here, gets across the curb and tries to get it stopped, and he does clash the tyre wall just a bit, so that might have caused some light suspension damage if he's not too careful. And as the field tears past, he's now down course to 7th behind Brian Stark. So let's just look at how it's shaken out with 6 minutes gone out of the 45. Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez must be thinking he's in the prime seats and that Christmas has come early, because he's now finds himself in the lead here at round 3 of the Winter Series, with Johnny Simon in a superb 2nd place. Martin Hodash is currently running in an equal best 3rd, because he did manage 3rd place at the opening race at Imola, unless the GP cost served me wrong, which I'll have to check in a second. Jorik Bosho is up to 4th, he's doing well also. Matt Sentel is up and down. Oh, a spinner! And that is, that's Dmitry Zakharov. He was lucky to not get collected by Fernandez. Thankfully he was having his accident off the racing line, which meant that Fernandez was able to drive past without too many problems. But that certainly would have been a heart-stopping moment for Rodriguez. I'm pretty sure if his car continued rolling across the circuit, that could have been one heck of an accident.
Yeah, it's surprising to see that Zakharov's already a lap down. He said that he had issues in the previous round at Estoril with his wheel, so maybe those issues haven't been rectified for this 3rd round, and he's pulling into the pits now, probably to retire.
Of course, if he is retiring, possibly for a lengthy stop to try and fix whatever the problem might be. We're now looking at Marcel van der Linden. Of course, starts at the back of the grid, up to 8 spots, so he's already inside the top 10 after 7 minutes. And now we look back at the battle for 9th between Adrian Falcon and Andrew Ford. Falcon in the grey and red car and Ford in the blue and white car. Just behind, of course, you see Jim Paris. In fact, I don't believe they're teammates, but of course they're just running the same livery on the car, it just seems to, because there are no teams. It's purely just a drivers' championship, and also a chance for us to gauge the level of competition and the level that R Factor 2 is at, as I think Falcon and Ford are about to go to combat a little bit down towards the complex. They're always side by side. Oh, that was lagging. They touch again, they bang wheels like Formula Fords. Oh no, they're in contact! Oh no, I can also see that coming, but Falcon and Ford, Falcon's managed to carry on without keeping off the barriers, but Ford has taken the heaviest hit. He went straight into the tyres, and that's torn off both front and rear wings, and that's another trip to the pits for somebody else, Sam.
Yep, yet another mistake there. It's very, very difficult into that turn 11-12 section. You've got a fast left-hander followed by an increasingly slower right-hander, so it really probably isn't the best place to make an overtake, but it is one of the highest braking points on the track, so drivers are going to go for it there, but it does kind of bottleneck down, and that's really why we've seen a bit of contact there, and unfortunately Ford's crawling back to the pits now. He's really, really struggling.
Now on board with Patrick DeWitt, of course battling with Yuri Toman, but not for the position you'd expect them to be. They're battling over 11th spot rather than up at the front, dicing for the lead, after the incident right there at the corner we've just left between Toman and Parisis. Of course, Patrick DeWitt, we believe, possibly started on qualifying fuel. I'm guessing this occasion, not deliberately. But nonetheless, DeWitt's going to make a move up the inside and just left his brake a little too late. I think he possibly snatched the rears because it looks like the rear tyres did seem to lock around a little bit. The front started to come around, and that was rather a scary moment. And of course, Yuri Toman would have seen that coming in his mirrors, and possibly would have been prepared himself to try and make an evasive manoeuvre. As again, you can see just how much these guys lock up the inside tyre through some of these corners, and the smoke effect, of course, are prominent. As I think, is that DeWitt off onto the grass?
Yes, it is. Yep, he had a run in Toman. Toman went wide coming out of turn 10, and it looks like he just got on the outside of Toman coming into 11 and 12, and once again it's just that same corner's caught them out. DeWitt's taken avoiding action, gone wide into the gravel trap.
I have to apologise if I'm a little bit behind or I don't catch instance immediately. My stream is a little bit kind of, it locks up a little bit occasionally, so obviously I'm trying to just keep up the best I can. Most of the time it's fine, but for the moment at least it's not so much of a problem. But of course Rodriguez continues to lead from Simon in second and Hodas in third. I think, to be fair, Sam, three drivers that we probably weren't expecting to be in the top three at this point in the race.
No, absolutely not. Hodas had a good race at Estoril. I've forgotten where he finished now, but he did have a fantastic run through the field. Just looking at the results, can't seem to see him anywhere. Oh yes, oh no, he dropped down, yes, and scored only a few points in the end, but did have a good run. Have we lost Johnny Seaman? He's dropped down into 7th place, so something's happened to him. He was in 2nd, and suddenly he's down in 7th.
So some of our top contenders are dropping like flies here at Poznan, incredibly, so it's now shaken up the order once more. As you said, Simon is now down to 7th, as mentioned, and there he is now fighting with incredibly Villa Lapala, so they're all getting in the wars today, which is absolutely unbelievable. And of course the man who's just sailing away at the front without any kind of troubles is Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez, and he leads still from Hodas is 2nd, Jorik Boshov is now 3rd, Sentel 4th, Brian Stark is up to 5th, Lapala now holds 6th after his earlier mistake, and then Johnny Simon in 7th, Marcel van der Linden still 8th throughout all of this, despite starting from the back of the grid and having a fantastic start in the first couple of laps. Jim Parisis, after his contact with Yuri Toman, is now 9th, ahead of Adrian Falcon in 10th after his collision with Andrew Ford. And I believe Ford is now out of the race. Also we've got Yuri Toman in 11th spot, with Patrick DeWitt in 12th. They're still scrapping over the best of the rest outside the top 10. And Oscar Daniel Carmona, Willem Kraner and James Sadler rounding out the 15 cars that we still have running here in round 3 of the 2014 Formula Sim Racing Winter Series. So at the moment then, we're coming up to just about almost a third race distance. We're 12 minutes gone out of the 45. So of course we're going to have to start possibly thinking about pit stops here at some point, of course, because these guys will have to make, I guess, at least one stop for tyres. And it's these kind of cars here, of course, that they have they're 425 brake horsepower, of course, added on the 75 brake horsepower for the overboost button they have as well, so they're actually producing about 500 on boost. And it's powered by, of course, a turbocharged engine from an Audi TT developed by Mountune. So fuel efficiency, of course, turbos technically are far more fuel efficient, as is the reason why F1's gone to 22 turbos back for 2014. But tyre-wise, of course, the turbo pressure is going to be spinning up the rears a lot, and of course, with the fact these guys are locking up the front so much, it does mean effectively it certainly is a case of whoever can look after their tyres the most effectively in a turbocharged car like this, the longer, of course, you'll be able to go on the stint and potentially gain an advantage and maybe even an undercut on your rivals.
Yeah, and not to forget that in our last race at Estoril, we had David Greco, Jim Parisis and Matt Sentel all going through the whole race distance, the full 45 minutes, without making a pit stop at all, and it paid off for them because they finished 1, 2, 3, whereas the likes of Patrick DeWitt had to make a pit stop and then try and charge back through the field. So it'd be interesting to see if more people try and stay out for the whole race today to try and gain even more of an advantage.
That's a very good point. There possibly are some drivers who will have looked at what happened yesterday and think maybe they can apply the same tactics as to possibly staying out and actually just refuting a pit stop and trying to make their tyres last the whole 45 minutes, but we'll have to wait and see how it plays out as we head further into the race. We've got an onboard here of Brian Stark in 5th, chasing after both Matt Sentel in 4th and Jaakko Boschhoff in 3rd, and both should be definitely happy with this. So I think that we've got Adrian Falcon in the pits. Looking on the screen on the left hand side, yes we do, so he's dropping down the order back to what will be 15th. So he's had some problems on the track. I wonder if that's possibly a legacy for his contact with Andrew Ford. In fact, he's actually retired altogether, so maybe. Now let's have a look here. Now, he's just come straight into the pits here, so whether or not he's had some damage, I think possibly it could be whether he's had some, well, he did make some contact with Ford, but of course it was Ford who went off into the tyres, and that would of course ripped off both his wings and possibly some suspension damage. Whereas Falcon seemed to come off that relatively unscathed, but maybe there was more to that accident than we thought.
Yeah, I'm not too sure. His lap times weren't looking too bad. He was still in the low 20s, where he was doing, you know, high 19s beforehand. So he dropped off the pace a little bit, but that could have been expected due to the tyres. So maybe he just felt like calling it a day because he was so far behind. It's very hard to see that, just retiring for no apparent reason, at least to us.
We've got 2 more cars in the pits. Willem Craner and James Sadler also making stops. Craner's back out and just waiting to see what happens with Sadler as we just cycle through the field. And looking through, we've got Brian Stark gives this awesome battle going on here for 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th between Boschhoff, Sentel, Stark and Lapala. Currently looking at Brian Stark in 5th, chasing after Brian Stark, the Scotsman. So Brian Stark is the Scotsman, Sentel's the American, I do apologise. And then we've got Lapala in 6th and 5th. Of course, Lapala was had a mixed year last year with both Ghost Speed and Nash Racing in the World Series and the World Championship. Had occasions when he could have put on some great performances, but luck just didn't seem to be with him most of the year, and he had very kind of glimmers of hope on occasional races. But really, Lapala's going to hope that 2014 is a better year and that he can kind of rebuild, because he really was in the hunt in 2013. I think, especially if I'm correct, with the World Trophy when he was battling it out with Peter Burlack. Of course, now Lapala is now up. He's going to be a fully fledged World Championship driver. I'm assuming with Go Speed, and he'll have to really step up his game, especially if we are moving to R-Factor 2. And of course, as we said before last year with the Winter Series, it's a great chance for these guys to get some early practice in with R-Factor 2 in a race situation, because you don't necessarily get that online, you know, when you're not in a league situation or in a championship. Of course, if you're racing online just with other random people, you know, most of them might be out there just for fun. They're not actually racing out there seriously. Whereas with a championship like this, not only are we gauging if R-Factor 2 is ready for FSR, but whether or not these guys are ready for it as well, and whether or not they can handle the fact that they're racing against each other on the sim and how it performs in this kind of situation.
Yeah, I think one of the big things about R-Factor 2 is the tyre physics is so much more complicated, and there's just more to it than R-Factor 1. You can lock your brakes up going into a corner and get a real big flat spot on the tyre, and then after that your grip's just going away quite drastically, so you really have to, you know, just be careful with the tyres. You can't just dive into every single corner like you're on a qualifying lap in R-Factor 2, I've found. So I think there is a bit more kind of consistent driving is very much rewarded in this series.
And also what's also important is also talking about the particle physics with, you know, the smoke effects and the dust and everything, so that kind of plays another factor in terms of the fact that if someone does go off and kicks up dust into the air, or they do lock a tyre, it does at least kind of almost hinder your vision slightly. You have to kind of almost brace yourself for anything that could be in front of you that could potentially be kicking off. So these guys are also going to have an extra element of where it wasn't so prominent in R-Factor, now it is in R-Factor 2, and they're just going to have to keep their eyes open and try and keep out of trouble as best they can.
Yeah, I do think there is a little bit of a push to try and reduce the smoke effects, because I believe that's the reason why we're having these rolling starts at the moment. It's not something that should become the norm in FSR at all. But a lot of the drivers have complained about just too much smoke, not being able to see on the first lap, especially with people going sideways, and that's where you can unfortunately end up T-boning someone. So I think there is a little bit of kind of a direction by the admin to try and reduce the smoke in some form, so maybe we might see that in the last 1 or 2 rounds, I don't know.
So we continue to watch this battle between 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. It's Jaakko Poznan in the green and white car, but might have a switch position here as Lapala has lined up, start down the pit straight off the final corner and just breezes past him as though he even wasn't there. Start's going to make another move down the inside to try and repass, but Lapala has enough momentum and carries enough speed through turn 1 to just start to pull away already, and he'll start charging towards the back of Matt Sentel's car for 4th spot. As you see, start locking up there. Notice there's aforementioned smoke effects, which have been quite the talk of the paddock, at least in terms of possibly trying to reduce those. And I'm sure that there's something which maybe ISI can implement, or someone can at least code, which basically just reduces the effects but still has them there, so it's an extra element for the drivers to think about. Beauchamp now 3rd, he's in the green and white car on your screen as you'll see him flash through. Then we've got Matt Sentel in the blue and white car with the red nose. Then it's Lapala who's in the red and white machine. It's the red car predominantly with the red nose and the white wings. And we have lost Brian Stark somewhere. Brian Stark has dropped down to 9th position. So what's happened to Brian Stark then?
I think it's just a timing glitch. I think it's just a timing glitch, because on my screen he is still running behind Lapala, so hopefully when he comes across the start-finish line he should just refresh the timing and he should be right back up there in 6th place again, as we'll see any second now. Yes, it does.
Yeah, there we go. So Brian Stark then back in 6th. There's a small timing glitch, and that's happened all the time, of course, with the server. Just obviously with some drivers aren't just picked up by the server immediately, and obviously it takes until they get across the line for it to re-register, and that's all they go by on that one. So looking now slightly back further down through the field, we're just looking through, cycling through. We're watching Patrick DeWitt here, still following Yuri Torman, and these two, I'm a little bit surprised because they haven't actually been charging up through the field as quickly as we'd expect, because of course Turan might still be carrying damage from his collision with Paresis, if any at all, and Patrick DeWitt obviously is now back on what is essentially race fuel now, and I'm a bit surprised that their pace hasn't been quick enough for them to actually start charging back up through the top 10, because the next car at the road in front of them is ironically Paresis, but even so, he hasn't really made too many moves in terms of trying to claw his way back up onto the tail of Marcel van der Linden, who is currently holding 7th spot to start from the back of the grid. So, I mean, are you as surprised as I am on this one? I think it's surely these three, if they're running at the pace that they was quick enough to get them near the front of the grid, unless they're carrying some kind of a problem, whether they've overrun their tyres a little bit, or there's something another element that's possibly stopping them from making progress, they really aren't making the impact that we were expecting them to.
Yeah, I think looking at the times, Toman's been doing about mid-19s pretty much all the way. He started in the 18s and dropped down into the 19s as the tyres have worn off, whereas Paresis has run the same about the 19s as well. So they're both running consistent lap times, but yeah, you're absolutely right. They're not really coming through the field as much as we would have thought. I mean, looking at the gap between Paresis and van der Linden, it's about 2 seconds, and so it's not really dirty air is going to be playing any part. So you would expect Paresis to be all over the back of him, but it's just not. So there must be damage or something that's just affecting them.
Well, of course, we haven't seen DeWitt go off at all in any circumstance, so I'm guessing maybe that he's just obviously suffering with lack of pace now he's on race fuel. We're looking at Jim Paresis now, who I say hasn't really caught Marcel van der Linden, but he is in his sights. He's not too far away. He's just about a couple of seconds in front, and that score's going to be over 8 spots as soon as he gets onto the tail. Looking at lap times, comparison on lap times, Sam, I mean, how are Paresis' lap times stacking up against van der Linden's? Is he kept closing enough to pass him in the next few laps, or are they kind of just matching each other in terms of sector times?
Van der Linden's times have been, well, all over the place really. He's done an 18.6, 19.7 and a 19.3, so he's got about a second difference between all of his recent lap times, whereas Paresis has been doing constant low 19s and 19.0, 19.2, 19.4. So assuming that van der Linden does a slow lap, then Paresis will definitely catch him, but at the moment he has picked up his pace a little bit more and done a 19.0. So Parise isn't really catching him as much as we would have thought, that's for sure.
Van der Linden also has another incentive to go faster in the shape of Johnny Simon in front of him to try and relieve the Australian of 7th spot. Of course, Simon is trying to push his way through the field as well. He's actually just not too far away from this train for 3rd place. Simon just runs a little too deep into the corner. Oh, and he had to stop, and oh my goodness! And Van der Linden went straight through his car, and well, that was a heart-stopping moment if ever there was one. I'm sure Van der Linden must have been thinking, "Crikey, what the hell's going on here?" Because Johnny Simon, you could see him. I'm not sure if we can get a replay at all, but Simon just lost the back end a little bit on the exit of the corner, and just had to stand on the anchors, and that effectively just left Van der Linden, because he was so close, with no time to get out of the way. But even there was a bit of difference between the connection of the two of them. Van der Linden did go straight through Simon's car, and there doesn't appear to be any damage for either of them. So I think Simon, either because of the fact he's in Australia, is that doesn't suffer any problems, although he is into the pits right now, so maybe there was some damage, as we've also got Jurek Bozhov in the pits as well. And also, whilst we've been talking, we have also lost James Sadler as well, so we are now down to 14 cars. Simon gets away now, and possibly that's the halfway point, so I guess that was possibly just a regular tyre stop for Simon as he rejoins now behind Patrick DeWitt and in front of his fellow countryman Blair Disley, so back out in 11th. So he's now going to do what to do, but surely if that was the tyres at the end of their life, I'm pretty sure it gave them a nice final send-off, like with 4 big black spots at the end of that, black spots I should say, at the end of that stint.
Yeah, I wonder if that was actually the motive for Simon coming in. He's not really looked the same driver ever since he went off in those first few laps from 2nd position, and he hasn't been able to recover either. So it definitely appears to be, if you make a mistake and go off the track, you're not going to get your positions back unless you are fortunate enough to pass other people making mistakes themselves.
On board with Brian Stark, 5th position. And looking ahead of him is Matt Santel, the American, in 4th. Matt actually had a fantastic race last time out in Estoril, but he managed to get himself onto the podium. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Sam, that was behind both David Greco and Jim Parise. So he had a great run, and that's possibly going to put him in the shop window for some other teams going forwards into this year's championship. Speaking of this year's championship, we have actually had a few things announced. We have actually had the calendar announced for the 2014 FSR season as a whole, and because we're on R-Factor 2 and not so many circuits have been released, we are only going to have 12 rounds, with the opening round of the season taking place actually in Bahrain. Then we go to Malaysia. The 3rd round hasn't been decided, but we go to Australia in Melbourne in round 4, and of course the 12 rounds of the championship, apparently it was a mass vote by all the drivers that thought that 12 rounds would be better rather than extending it to 15 and beyond. But 12 rounds for our first championship on R-Factor 2. Do you think that's a plenty, or do you think maybe there could have been a couple more squeezed in? What's your opinion on that, Sam?
I think it's very hard to sit on the fence with this one. There's both for and against with both. The reason why it was voted in was because in the last couple of years, when it's come down to the final few rounds of the season, we haven't had as many drivers in each of the championships, especially in World Series. We were looking at maybe about 12 or 13 drivers for the last few rounds, and a lot of the managers, well, the team managers, felt that there was just too many rounds in the season and everyone was losing interest by the end. So to combat that, they've reduced it by 3 rounds to hopefully keep the attendances up throughout the season. Whether that'll be the case or whether it will be another case of 3 rounds with hardly any drivers, well, not hardly any drivers, but a reduced amount of drivers in, remains to be seen. So I think for this year it probably is an experiment. If it works, we might see 12 rounds again. If it doesn't, then we could be back up to 15.
Well, who knows? We're now watching Patrick DeWitt coming under attack from a fresh tyre shot Johnny Simon, and it looks like he's made the move stick up into 10th spot, so back into the top 10 on that fresh set of rubber for the Australian. Of course, past one of the most, if not effectively the most experienced driver in the field, Patrick DeWitt. Of course, also Patrick is trying to be making his name as he got through into GT Academy. If I'm correct, he got through in the Dutch segment of GT Academy. I don't think he eventually made it to the finals, but another fellow sim racer, the German Florian Strauss, made it through, and of course he's now off winning. He actually won GT Academy Germany. He's now going forward to a racing career for his own. Actually, he went out to the Dubai 24 Hours with his fellow winners and won. And his car won its class first time out, which is absolutely incredible. So, congratulations to Florian. Back with Blair Disley, on board with Blair Disley, but DeWitt does seem to be struggling quite a lot because now Disley is sailing up onto the back. But in fact, DeWitt now does pull into the pits, so it looks as though he's had enough of those tyres and decides to get a fresh set of boots on for the remaining 17 minutes in this 45-minute race here at Poznan.
Yeah, that's the second time he's pitted today, so it's probably the reason why he's into the pits 28 minutes in instead of a little bit earlier as he was in Estoril. He was one of the first to pit. He does seem to work his tyres a little bit more than the other drivers. He always looks like he's on the very edge, really taking that car to its limits and lighting the tyres up. So maybe that's his issue, and we'll see how he copes with that for R Factor 2 if we continue with this series, of course.
I guess really, whilst we look at his battle, we should possibly check him out at the front because we've hardly spoken about him, and he's been up there just minding his own business up at the front and just sailing away with it. Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez does still continue to lead here at Poznan, and with quite a margin, although Martin Hodas is only about, I'd say, 3 or 4 seconds away, so he's kept him somewhat honest, but Rodriguez does have certainly quite an advantage over the second place man. So that gets it under brakes for turn 4, and he's still being chased hard by Villa Lapala. So Lapala's come up pretty good through the field as other drivers have made their stops. He's now in a podium place and actually doing rather well to start just eating into the gap between himself and Hodas. You can see it's, I think, just over a second or so as we head in towards the tricky part of the course here, the second half of the Poznan circuit. He's really closing in now. Just
an interesting point in Rodriguez, in the last couple of laps his lap times have dropped off. He's gone into the low 20s now, where he was running in about the mid to high 19s, so perhaps his tyres have suddenly gone off, and Hodas is cutting the lead down. It's down to 2.2 seconds now. He's already taken a good half a second out of him in this lap alone.
So we could see possibly a three-way scrap for the lead. Meanwhile, Johnny Simon has got past Yuri Torman, so he's now into 9th spot, so fresh rubber certainly seems to be working wonders for the Australians. He's now found himself back into the top 10. Disley's now sat 11th, Rodriguez now in 12th.
Rodriguez has just pitted, and he did overshoot his pit boxes a little bit as well, so that's going to cost him perhaps 2 seconds there, which could be costly if Hodas does pit in the next lap or two.
And what's incredible is just how close the rest of the field were behind as they went past. In fact, he's already down to 7th. And now they make the 8th because Bosch's just gone through, and I wonder whereabouts Yuri Torman's going to be as he goes through. And he's nowhere to be seen. In fact, he's right down at the top end of the pit straight. So Fernandez is back out in 8th. That's not so bad because he is back out in plenty of clean air, so he can start pumping in some lap times and possibly gaining himself an undercut should Martin Hodas and Villa Lapala pit within the next couple of laps, and of course including the likes of Matt Sintel, Brian Stark, Marcel van der Linden, and of course Jim Paris, who started on the front row. As we are now into the final third of this race, so if anyone is going to start making a pit stop, it's going to be around this kind of time range. On board Marcel van der Linden, the Dutchman, as he now is chasing after Brian Stark, the Scotsman. This is over 4th and 5th spot. A little bit of curb on the exit, and they took a lot of curb into the first part of that little chicane. It's left, right, and then right again, and van der Linden getting across the marbles, had to back out of it and out of the throttle just to get the front end of the car around again. And that's another thing which is also prominent, is that we do have proper marbles here in R Factor 2 compared to R Factor 1, so if you do get offline it can definitely affect you, as van der Linden decides he's had enough of these tyres and decides to get a fresh set for his one and only pit stop, with now just under 13 minutes left to run in round 3 at Poznan. And Boschov goes through into 6th.
Vili Lapala, just to update on him, he has been constantly half a second faster than Hodas in the last couple of laps, so be interested to see what happens now that he's right on the back of Hodas, whether the dirty air is really going to start affecting him as it has with Jim Paris in the last couple of rounds when he was in 2nd place as well.
They're both coming up to lap Oscar Daniel Carmona, who is in 13th spot, and of course a lap down. So Hodas looking a little bit wary, but then Lapala did get a twitch of oversteer on the exit of the right-hander, and they now run back towards the small complex that takes them back towards the pits to complete another lap. So Hodash, you can see, is in the blue and white car, and Lapala in the white and red machine, just to identify them. Hodash, the man from, if I can get his nationality right, Hodash is from Slovenia, and Lapala from Finland, and these two actually are directly next to each other in the championship. Hodash is 6th, Lapala 7th, and Hodash has a 7-point advantage on him at this point in time, and of course he'll extend that advantage even further should he remain in the lead at the moment. Of course, he has yet to stop, as has Lapala, as has Sentel, and both Stark and Paresis. The man who's at the top of the drivers who I think have stopped, quite interestingly, is Jorik Boshov, because of course he's up there in 7th spot, in 6th I have to say, sorry, and he has already made a pit stop. He made that rather early on, but Rodriguez has pitted, of course, we see in his 7th. Johnny Simon is pitted, as has Yuri Torman after his earlier incident. Disley's there also in, trying to work out the positions now, is that 9th spots?
Yes, it is, yeah.
Yes, 9th spot, and Blair Disley rounding out the top 10 with Van Linden 11th after his stop. Patrick DeWitt rather off the pace again in 12th. Carmona 13th and Craner 14th. We've got a change of position here as Disley's trying to make his way around Torman on the exit of turn 4. And tries to go side by side, but then just gets hung out to dry and runs out of room. So he's now going to have to fend off Van der Linden, who's also on fresh tyres. So back on board with the Australian. There is Yuri Torman's machine in front of him. A little bit of a wider run through that corner than the Australian. And gets a little bit closer to the corner, so I think this is going to try again here. And he will try again. Look, he's got so much more grip on the exit and through the middle of the corner. It allows him to carry so much more pace, but he's going to have to be in a catch-22 situation. He's going to have to keep one eye on Torman, but one eye on this man, Van der Linden, of course, because he's closing in on fresh rubber also. And he's starting to get some temperature into those tyres and watching away at these two guys. And if he can just stay there, he'll have to get a double toe from both of the cars in front of him. But I'm pretty sure Disley is maybe going to line up. Oh, he's on the grass a little bit on the exit, maybe as a result of the aerodynamic effect following in Torman's slipstream. But Torman's getting very defensive, and there was never enough of a gap for Disley to get down the inside. So he's smartly stayed behind the man from the Czech Republic. But what a scrap this is! Look at this, 9th, 10th, and 11th all together as Disley gets a little bit on the grass. There goes Van der Linden down the outside into turn 4. And just leaves Disley like a sitting duck and is straight away onto the back of Torman. And I'm pretty sure he's saying, watch and learn, Blair, this is how you do it.
Yeah, it's a great little pass there by Marcel Van der Linden, ever the opportunist. And he's now up the inside of Torman.
There he goes again.
Yeah, turn 9 I think that is, and he has made the move up the inside, going to have the switch back for the left-hander. Yep, he's got the move done. So Torman's really struggling on these old tyres and surely damage on his car as well.
Van der Linden taking 2 places in the space of a few corners, and look at Torman, he's trying to try and fight back straight away. He's certainly got some life left in them, but you saw him actually in the middle of the corner. He had to back out because he's really not happy with those tyres. As Disley looks about to move, they're going to bang wheels. Oh, Disley's run off into the grass, keeps it off the barriers, thankfully, but he's going to get a lot of greenery, a lot of sand on those tyres. That's now taken a little while for him to clear off. And he has also lost another place too. Who's he lost a place to? That's Patrick DeWitt. Yeah, Patrick DeWitt's gone through, so he's now back down to 12th spot. So as a result of that, so I don't know, that was maybe just a bit of a racing incident. They were both trying to go for a piece of tarmac that was there as what's happened.
Lapala's dropped down into 3rd place. It's gone off my screen, I haven't seen it, but he's dropped down into 3rd place now. It's definitely not due to pitting because he's right behind Matt Sentel, so he must have made a mistake somewhere and dropped the air. He's gone wide into turn 3, I think that is. He's just locked, no, turn 2, sorry. He's just locked his brakes, gone straight on into the gravel trap and dropped down into 3rd.
I'm just getting over the marbles and the brakes. I think that's actually turn 4 because the little kinks off of turn 1 class as corner, so it's 2 and 3. So I think that's actually turn 4. But now Lapala is going to be charging now, of course. He's now got what, he's got about 8 minutes left to go in this 45-minute race, and if he can try and get close in on Matt Sentel in the time that he's got left, he will certainly try and create an opportunity to grab 2nd place back again from the American as they turn their way out of turn 1 and through the kinks of turn 1, the right of 2, the left of 3, and then the scene of his little mistake a lap earlier. I'm not sure if he's made the same mistake, we'll have to find out. Looking at Brian Stark, who is now under attack for the incredible Jim Paresis, who's made a lot more progress than Stark. And there he goes, in fact, on the exit. So Stark went a little too deep into turn 4. Paresis takes full advantage of this. Thank you very much. I'll take 4th position and goodbye, I'm gone.
Yeah, Parisis was on the same times as the leaders before he got to Stark, and then suddenly he was dropping a second per lap, so it was really costing him there. It was crucial that he got past quickly, and he's done that now, so he's only 10 seconds behind Hodas now, so he's going to have to really get on with it if he wants to catch him in these final 7 minutes.
Looking again at the parlour, staying with Matt Centel as they wind their way back towards the pits. One more corner to go before they end the lap. And just right in the distance in front of them is Martin Hodas. So first, second and third are just a couple of seconds separated each between the three of them. So head down the pits again in 6th gear. Not on the rev limiter just yet, but you can see just in front there is on board Martin Hodas. So Hodas goes through your shot in the bright blue and white car.
Van der Linden, he's gone. He's disappeared off my screen. He's out of the race. So it looks like an issue for him. Is it coming into turn 10?
Let's have a look then.
Oh, wow! Unbelievable.
Well, that's... not sure what you can say to that. Just clip the curb and... yep, you saw what happened. So... that's possibly something that needs to be addressed. I know there was a lot of that in Imola at least, and also there were 1 or 2 problems with it in Estoril. So, but wow,
yeah,
a lot of air.
It looks like there's a little bit of an anti-cut curb on the inside of that curb, so it must be protruding out of the ground, and the cars just hit it, and that's it, race over.
I'm pretty confident that wouldn't ever happen in real life. That's for sure. I don't think Formula 2 cars fly that high.
Well, they're definitely not designed to.
No, not designed to. If they do, it's going to be one hefty landing. I think it's safe to say after an landing like that, you have to call the chiropractor. Watch it, as you watch again. As Rodriguez Fernandez, it's not a laughing matter, is it? Chiropractor back injuries are very serious. So, anyway, moving forwards, Beauchard is now holding on to 6th from a very feisty Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez. So, when that start's gone wide into the ground, I think he's clipped the barrier as well. Brian Stark, I think, has probably clipped the barrier. And there's that suspension damage. It looks to me as if the left front has been pushed in a little bit. Maybe that's just an allusion to how it looks, but I think possibly he's had a bit of suspension damage on the left-hand side at some point, possibly. Whether or not it's just it's not like iRacing where it pushes itself in. No, I think it's pretty just clipped the wall. That possibly might be a little bit of effect. It may have possibly affected the tracking or the steering, but I'll have to wait and see.
He's definitely got an issue though. He's really, really cautious into all the corners now. It looks like he's really struggling, so expecting to come into the pits at the end of this lap, and that's a shame for him because he was in 4th place and he's going to drop probably out the points now.
So we wait, of course, for Martin Hodas, who now we're into the last 5 minutes of this 3rd round of the Formula SimRacing Winter Series at Poznan in Poland. Currently has the lead with Matt Centel 2nd and Villa Lapala in 3rd. Parisis now sits 4th after his first lap troubles with Yuri Torman. 5th is now Jaakko Beauchard, although he's been closed in quite considerably by Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez, who is on fresher tyres. Then we have, of course, Brian Stark in 7th after his off just moments ago. Just on the exit of the very corner which Rodriguez is on exiting now on the pit straight. Then we have Johnny Simon in 8th spot. Patrick DeWitt up to 9th. And Yuri Torman, the man that started in pole position, is now finding himself down in 10th spot with Disley 11th, Carmona 12th and Craner 13th, and last car still running. Retirement so far are Van der Linden, Sadler, Falcon, Ford and Zaharov. So started with 19 cars, down to 13. Not a huge attrition rate, but we have lost possibly 1 or 2 drivers that either just got a little bit over ambitious or just tries to take liberties too much with the circuit itself.
Yeah, definitely been a circuit thing. Definitely the corner of the day has to be turn 11 and turn 12. That little bottleneck as it goes from left to right has caught quite a few drivers out going side by side. But looking at Matt Centel now, he's actually about a few tenths of a second faster than Hodas, and he's got the gap down to 0.9 tenths of a second, so we could still have a race for the win here.
Matt Centel on the charge. If he senses any opportunity that he can get past Martin Hodas for the victory, he will take it. But of course he has to be careful because of course Villa Lapala isn't too far away either. They come across the line with 3 minutes left to go here at Poznan. Through turn 1 they go, very long 180-degree corner, and they fire it out the other side. Turn 2, which is a flat out kink to the right. Turn 3 a kink to the left, and now under brakes for turn 4. You can see Centel does close under braking. is that enough though? Is it he needs to have a bit more of a grip advantage in the corners, and he is getting slightly closer, a bit more confident through turn 5 and the exit of 6, and I'll come towards the hairpin of 7. Let's wait and see how this one plays out there. So he's now heads into, that might have been turn 8 because that little kink might have been turn 7, and he really is closing, and he's bringing the parlour with him as well. So this potentially could be seeing a change for the lead with just a couple of minutes left to go in this race. Martin Hodas has done everything right. He hasn't really put a wheel wrong at all. But Matt Sentel on pure pace in what I believe is only, I think, his 3rd ever FSR race, and same with Hodas as well. So these guys are going for their first ever FSR win and only their 3rd appearance in the league itself.
Yeah, the pressure's really going to be in their shoulders now, and just a quick point, you'd have to say that not pitting has been the way to go once again, as the top 4 drivers of Hodas, Sentel, Lapala and Parisis all didn't pit, and that's where they've ended up in this race so far.
I'd imagine we're possibly on the penultimate lap because we've only just ticked down to a minute to go, so either that or we are possibly going to get, it's going to be this could be the last lap depending on how quickly these guys are kind of a pace they're running. I have a feeling this could be white flag time. We could be on the last tour of the Poznan circuit, which means that Matt Sentel is running out of time and opportunities to make this pass. Jörg Boshoff still in 5th ahead of Adrian Rodriguez in 6th, and Jim Parisis is still in 4th spot, but he's nowhere near this battle for the lead as Sentel tries to close in under braking, and he does get a little bit closer, but Hodas, the Slovenian, just has the advantage for the moment. We wait to see whether or not we are going to get the checkered flag around this time by, but it's looking pretty close between the 3 of them, and I think unless Hodas makes a small mistake, and I don't want to put the commentator's curse on him, he may possibly have this one sewn up, Sam.
Yeah, it's looking good for him, isn't it? All he's got is his last couple of corners. This is the major one, turn 12, 13. He's got it all right there, so the final corners are pretty much a fast, full 6th gear corner, so he should be okay, hopefully.
Time has clicked on the 45 minutes, so I'm pretty sure unless we get a white flag this time around, Martin Hodas will come out of the final corner. Is it enough? He pulls to the pit lane. It is going to be enough. Martin Hodas wins round 3 at Poznan, his first ever FSR victory and only his 3rd race, and that now goes with the 3rd place that he managed in Imola, and that's going to be a serious haul of points to help him position in the championship. Excellent job. He took advantage of everyone that had their problems, and he comes away the victor. Matt Sentel with another confident performance in 2nd spot, and Billy Lapala can't be too disappointed with 3rd. Jim Parisis will have to settle for 4th spot, as he unfortunately had his contact with Yuri Torman at the beginning of the race, and he will finish off the podium. 5th spot goes to Adrian Rodriguez Fernandez, who led for so long, but of course his tyres just couldn't hold out for that amount of time and had to make a pit stop. Jörg Boshoff is in 6th. It actually turns out that Fernandez did get past Boshoff in the end. I slightly missed that, and apologies for that one. Johnny Simon, the Australian, in 7th. Patrick DeWitt managed to claw himself back up to 8th. Brian Stark, after his off in the latter stage of the race, has to end up in 9th. And Yuri Torman, well, what can you say? Pole position, and then it all goes to pot 4 corners off the start after colliding with Parisis. And through no fault of his own, he's down to 10th. He finishes in 10th place with Disley 11th, Carmona 12th, and Craner in 13th. And the retirements are Van der Linden, Sadler, Falcon, Ford, Zaharov, and that was it for our 19 cars that started this race. But Sam, I think Martin Hodas, as you said, didn't put a wheel wrong, and you can see he's rightfully celebrating with the traditional donuts. Although in this occasion, unlike F1, you don't get a fine, so you're free to as many donuts as you want.
Yeah, you'd have to say he was a bit of a silent assassin as well. We didn't really see too much of him all race, and then suddenly he was at the front and leading, and he held on to the lead. He did have an attack from Matt Sentel, but he took all the pressure in, and those final few laps must have been the longest laps of his life that he's held on, and a well-deserved first victory for Hodas.
And I'll tell you what, if I was in this position, I'd be doing exactly the same thing right now. Just don't until either the tyres wear out or the engine expires. But that's the only way to do it. And he's just carrying on without a care in the world, which is fantastic to see. And I think also, again, it's another driver which potentially could be making a name for himself in one of the 2 feeder championships. Because, of course, the other piece of news we had this week was that the World Series and World Trophy monikers are gone. We have now changed our championships now to Pro and Ace, so effectively now they're a bit more well distinguished, and so now you start off in Pro, then you go to Ace, and then it's the World Championship. So World Trophy has become Pro, and Ace has now taken over the name from World Series. And also the race format has changed, where we now get a feature race and a sprint. So it's a little bit more like GP2. But just quickly before we round up, of course, and talk about some more of the drivers, and what are your thoughts on those kind of changes there with the race format and the new names?
Well, I do like the names. I think it is good to have a bit of a change, but at the end of the day, it's still a three-tier series, and that's the main thing. But in terms of the races, it will be interesting to see how it goes. The World Trophy race has dropped 15% from 75 to 60, just to make it a bit less shorter. But what was the World Series and will now be the Ace is really the big change. And I think the main kind of initiative from the league admins has been just to change the way the Ace is compared to World Championship, so that drivers who will be an Ace will want to look to get into the World Championship, because the series that they race in will be completely different in terms of the amount of laps and basically the style of races that they do. Whether the drivers will like being in a feature and sprint race format remains to be seen, and especially in terms of the sprint race, which could be a little bit of carnage with drivers really having to go for it with only a 30% race distance. What's that? That's what, only about 20 laps around some circuits, won't it?
Well, if it's anything like some of the madness we get in GP2 sometimes, I'm not sure if I should be excited or worried about it, but it should be quite an interesting spectacle to see nonetheless. So, of course, quickly focusing back on what happened, I guess we can get a bit more of analysis on what happened on the first lap, of course, between Toman and Paresis. And as we said, looking at the replay, it did seem as though Paresis has got a little bit too, either just completely missed his braking point or just got a little bit too adventurous trying to go down the inside of Toman. And just, of course, Toman was a complete passenger. He was just hitting the rear from Paresis and, of course, sent off into the gravel. And then there was the second piece of contact, which then sent him around into the back of the field. So I think really Toman in all of that was, in many cases, the innocent party.
Yeah, you can't really put any blame on Toman there, because he was the leader. He had the right of way on the track, and it did look like Paresis just tried to, make a last-minute move up the inside and just got the timing a little bit wrong, and that was it. He just clipped the rear of Toman's car and spun them both out of the race, effectively. I didn't see any post-race chat between the two, so I'm not sure how they're feeling after the race. Hopefully there's no sour grapes between the two, but it will be a championship defining moment potentially, as Paresis will be quite a distance ahead of Toman now in the overall standings.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, that does now put, I believe, Paresis into the championship lead, because I think if I look at the rules and points for the Winter Series, we see just how many points are available for a win. I'll look very quickly. It's 20. No, it's point distribution.
Yeah.
It's 25 points for a win. So that does mean now that has now jumped up Jim Paresis, I'd say, from 36 now to 51 points. So he's now taken a massive leap ahead of that's 25 points for a win, but he actually finished fourth, didn't he? I'm looking completely the wrong place. It's 12 points for fourth place. I do apologise on that one. 12 points for fourth place. So that now puts Paresis on 48 points, which means that he's now 11 points ahead of both Greco and I think also Toman, who came in 10th. So Toman will have got himself 1 point.
Yeah.
So it's now 10 points, in fact. So Toman is now on 38 points, and Paresis is on 48, with Greco now down on 37. And Sentel came in second place, which earned him,
18.
Let's have a look, 18. Yeah. So that now puts Sentel on 39 points. He's now also leapfrogged ahead of Greco as well. So Greco, from not racing, has gone from the championship lead to fourth place. And that's really going to hurt him. And that's probably going to be a bit of a wake-up call to see if he decides to race him for the final 3 rounds of the series, which is really going to be key to see whether or not he can claw it back. And he's a very experienced driver, of course, as well. He's no stranger to winning kind of races and championships and stuff. So Greco, I think, certainly will probably know that while it's not the end of the world, he's possibly going to have a lot more of a tougher fight in his hands now that he's had to drop around here at Poznan.
Yeah, I was actually surprised not to see Greco today, because he did allocate for the race very late last night, had to be said. I think perhaps past the allocation time, although he should have still been allowed to race all but at the back of the grid. So it is a bit weird not to see him here, and he has got a lot of work to do now, and it really will depend on whether Paresis could get a penalty for that first corner accident. I'm not entirely sure if if there will be any penalties in this series or not.
Well, I guess all that remains to be seen, and whether or not there are any penalties, I'm sure we'll find out in due course. So, of course, and until then, of course, we may as well wrap up our broadcast. And thank you very much for all of you guys who have watched. Apologies if you were posting on YouTube. We didn't get to see any comments because we were using a slightly different stream. But hopefully you did enjoy the broadcast. Of course, we'll look at those comments afterwards to see what you had to say about the race. But yeah, I guess overall, just before we wrap up, final thoughts. A decent enough race. Not too many incidents than we had in the past couple of races. But thankfully, the standards of driving is now starting to, I think, cleaned up a little bit, but I think that's due to the fact that these guys now understand the limits of what they can and can't get away with rFactor 2 and what in terms of driving in the Winter Series. So I think now they've got to round 3, they seem to have settled down a lot more, which is I think we'll see that in the second half of the season now, the final 3 races, we're going to see a lot better racing, a lot better driving standards, and hopefully by the time we get to it, we should give a nice little preset to precursor, in fact, to what I'm looking for, to FSR 2014 in terms of the 3 main championships.
Yeah, it has been a massive difference between rFactor 2 and rFactor 1. Just a slightly opinionated point that I felt rFactor 1 was a little bit too much of a touring car series in terms of the FSR mod, where drivers could just go side by side and really bash into each other and get away with it without too much damage and definitely no physics spinning them off the track or anything. So drivers have had to adapt, and it really is keep away from those tyres.
Well, whether or not tyres will be a talking point in the next round, we'll have to wait and see. Sam, I do apologise. You have to remind me, where are we next for round 4?
We're in Sepang in Malaysia.
Ah, the place where if you're not too careful, if you catch it in the rainy season, it rains. It rains in the rainy season. Rain is an understatement in Malaysia. I'm not sure whether we'll get any of that because I don't think we're running weather in this rFactor 2 one. Although there is
No, we're not.
Although there is now for the first time in the rFactor series a rain model. So whether or not that's going to be used in full for FSR, we'll have to wait and see whether or not that gets announced. It'd be good to see it because of course we might get some drivers that come to the forefront who are good drivers in the wet that we didn't actually know were good in wet and slippery conditions. But like I said, that remains to be seen. Be sure to join us in 2 weeks' time for round 4 at Sepang, where the championship battle will continue on, and we continue our odyssey into rFactor 2 and to whether or not we are 100% ready. I guess in many cases we are sort of ready for it because we have almost kind of committed. But until then, thank you very much for watching, and from myself, Scott Woodwiss, Sam Jones, my co-commentator, and also Jaakko Mikkonen on cameras, we hope you've enjoyed today's 3rd round. It is Martin Hodas who becomes another first-time winner in FSR. Can you make it another victor? Will we make it 4 from 4 next time out in Malaysia? But until then, be sure to stay tuned, and bye for now.